We're going to talk about a new feature in version 10 called client-side Xbasic. Client-side Xbasic is the ability to handle HTML events like the onClick or onBlur or onChange event using Xbasic instead of the standard JavaScript. So let's go ahead here and do a little demonstration. So I'm going to go here and put a button on this grid, and so if I go now into working preview, we can see that there's a button over there. And now let's go and define the event handler for this button. So I'm going to switch now from Action JavaScript to text mode, and I'll go here and I'll define a function that'll be called when the user clicks this button. So I'll go here and I'll say function1, and I'll pass into this function this, which will be appointed to the current button that was clicked. So at this point I've defined the function that gets called when the button is clicked, but I haven't yet defined the actual JavaScript function declaration. So if I go now into working preview, I'll get an error when I click the button over there because that function hasn't been defined. So now I'm going to go here, and now let's go and actually define what this function does. So I'll go here to declarations global, and I'm defining now the JavaScript function called function1 that takes an object as an argument. And here I can go here and actually define the body of the function, and I'll go here and say alert, this is JavaScript, the button ID is plus obj.id. And so there's the JavaScript definition of function1. So let's go ahead now and save that. And now if we go into to preview the grid, when I press this button, you can see here's the JavaScript function that gets called from the button. But now what's really interesting about client-side Xbasic is that when you're working in when you're using a grid on the desktop, which of course includes working preview. So if I were to take this grid and put it into an Xdialog on the desktop, or embed it on a form, or use it in working preview, then I'm using the grid on the desktop, and now you can actually call Xbasic from these event handlers. So let's go over here now, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to now take this function declaration and delete it from there. So now we no longer have a definition for function1, but now I'm going to go over to this new tab here called client-side Xbasic, and I'm going to define an Xbasic function to handle that event. So let's go here and say function1 as v, obj as p, end function, and now I'm going to just write my regular Xbasic event handler. So dim msg as c, message equals this is Xbasic you clicked on plus obj.id. So you can see that the same object that gets passed into the JavaScript function can also get passed into the Xbasic function over here. And now I'm going to go here and type in UI _ message box and then MSG. So let's go ahead now and save it, and we'll just save our component away. And just to be sure that so that you can see that we're working in working preview mode, I'm going to actually turn the server off right now. So the server's not running. So now I go into working preview mode and I press this button, and you can see now here is an Xbasic function that is running, and you can see it says this is Xbasic, and then you clicked on that. So what in effect is going on right now is I'm handling this button's onClick event using an Xbasic function because this grid is running on the desktop. Now of course, because it's Xbasic, I can also debug into it. So let's go here to the client-side Xbasic and just put in a debug one statement over there, and then let's go ahead now and then go into working preview, and then now click the button, and you can see there comes the